Hello and welcome in to Full Court Blitz. This is episode 2 of Football Frenzy. So excited to have you guys along again. Myself, KJ McCurley, and Alex Baumann back with you this week. We're excited to unpack another episode, mostly dedicated to college football. I know me and Alex are chomping at the bit, and my wife's going to be tired of football in about a week because that's all I'm going to want to watch. How about it, Alex?
I'm super excited for football to come around. We're right here. It's this weekend. We got the game we're going to preview.
Absolutely. And let's get right to it. First, some Alabama news, not so much of the good kind. Running back Jam Miller dislocated a collarbone. Now, with a collarbone injury, Alex, sometimes it can be 5 weeks. Sometimes it can be as little as 3. Sometimes it can take 8. With Jam Miller being at least for now, sidelined, how much does this affect Alabama's running back room?
I feel like I kind of spoke this into existence on last week's show. I talked about, God forbid, if Jan Miller got hurt, the running back room behind him, there's not going to be that big of a drop-off. And it ended up happening that week. Jan Miller dislocated his collarbone, and now he's out multiple games. Alex Booth of WVUA in Tuscaloosa talked with him at a Skippy's promotional event, funny enough, and Jan Miller told him that the doctors did not do surgery on his dislocated collarbone, and they do expect him to recover fast. The expectation is to be back for the Georgia game.
Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. Is it when is Georgia for you guys?
That's the 27th.
27th, yeah. So that's
September.
That's not even several weeks into the season hardly. So yeah, good to see for Jam Miller. Obviously the most experienced running back, but as Alex said, a load of talent waiting behind him. And how about another former Auburn Tiger and Cam Newton will be honored at this year's Georgia game in Jordan-Hare. Obviously, Cam Newton's stats, I mean, they pretty much speak for themselves. 185 for 280 pass completions. He went 66%. 30 touchdown passes, along with 264 carries for nearly 1,500 yards, 20 touchdowns. He's the leading passer and rusher in a single season all-time at Auburn. He did all of that in one season, drug a bunch of future insurance salesmen and fast food managers to the Natty, and the rest is history against Oregon. I know me and you spoke about this, me being an Auburn fan, you being, of course, for the Tide, and you agreed with me. I mean, this has been needing to happen. Cam Newton legacy for Auburn at Auburn speaks for itself.
It's long overdue. His jersey should have been up in the rafters as soon as 2010 season ended. It was so historic for that program, the best quarterback that's ever graced those doors. It's just crazy the championship was able to win with the lack of help he had around him. I understand he had a freshman running back in Michael Dyer who had that moment in the championship game against Oregon where everybody thought he was down. He wasn't, ended up scoring. You have somebody like Philip Lutzenkirchen, who is no longer with us, unfortunately, but he's a legend in the Auburn program. The offensive line, I think, was underappreciated for its time with the talent they had there.
Especially Ryan Pugh at center. I really would have liked to see him get some more chances at the next level. I mean, he was huge in the middle.
But none of the players offensively ended up being anything in the NFL. That this shows you how crazy it is that he was able to do that with that offense and make those players better around him. The defense, you're looking at two different guys there. Nick Farley, a defensive tackle who was just an absolute stud, and then Josh Bynes at linebacker. Those are really the two guys you think about when you talk about that Auburn defense. It's just, again, it's crazy that Cam Newton was able to will this team to a national championship.
Yeah, and you spoke a little bit on Michael Dyer. Interestingly enough, for Dyer, he actually did go to Louisville after a few years at a smaller school. Dyer actually broke a few of Bo Jackson's freshman records and was on pace to be an Auburn great. Didn't really slow down in his sophomore year, but then had some off-the-field stuff that broke him apart. But Cam Newton, man, he was really the first year I kind of paid attention to football. And Alabama in the Iron Bowl that year, they had the game.
Don't get me started.
I know.
Don't get me started.
I know it. And the comeback happened, and just an incredible career for a guy that, as you said, should have been done a long time ago. And Cam Newton, another Auburn legend to be honored. I just talked about him, Bo Jackson. He's going to actually be honored at the Iron Bowl. His jersey have obviously been retired. Bo Jackson, incredible talent, and I don't think modern day football fans, Alex, that aren't as familiar with Auburn and Alabama, I don't think they can begin to understand how good Bo Jackson was and how ahead of time he was, an incredible athlete in multiple facets of sport.
Unfortunately, I was never able to see Bo Jackson live, but watching the replays of what he did in college football and then his short-lived NFL career due to his hip injury, ended up playing baseball, being successful in that with the Kansas City Royals. It just goes to show you how talented this guy was, not only in football, but baseball, to go pro in both sports. And I really do think, had he not injured his hip in the NFL, he would have gone down as one of, if not the greatest running back of all time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He had top 3 running back of all time written all over him. You talk about talent-wise, you think maybe Walter Payton and maybe Herschel Walker, and that's probably the end of the list as far as guys that could even come close to Bo Jackson's talent. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the SEC. Breaking news today, they will expand to a 9-game conference regular season against conference opponents, of course. Alex will have a little bit more for you on this. I actually really like the move. It's basically to do away with a cupcake, if you will, for SEC schools, and also to whole tradition of rivalries and even non-conference rivalries that can happen. And I think this is a good start for college football to kind of clean up a few things schedule-wise that haven't really made sense for some time.
Yeah, so here's what the SEC ended up releasing is they'll continue with the single standings non-divisional structure. So what we saw last year with the 2 highest-ranked, best record in the SEC teams will play in the conference championship. Each school will play 3 annual opponents focused on maintaining many traditional rivalries. It'll be interesting what the SEC chooses being those traditional rivalries. Of course, they'll keep the Iron Bowl. They'll probably keep the oldest rivalry in the South with the Georgia and Auburn. I would highly expect Tennessee and Alabama to continue their rivalry. Maybe LSU and Alabama. That's kind of a expectation there with how that's been going ever since Saban took over. But those are what I look at for Alabama. And, of course, teams around the SEC have their own rivalries that they hope they can maintain. Each team's remaining 6 games will rotate among the remaining conference schools. Each team will face every other SEC program at least once every 2 years, and every opponent home and away every 4 years.
Yeah, and that to me is a step in the right direction for some better brand for college football, if you will. A lot of those games against cupcake teams, Auburn and Alabama, everybody has a few, you look at it, oh, that's a win. It's usually a homecoming game. and yeah, while those are good, especially for the other schools to, get compensated, it's not the best brand of football for schools that have just this trajectory of tradition. Another big talking point, and I know Alex and I both have a lot to say on this next one. Michigan head coach Sharon Moore is suspended. I think it's absolutely a slap on the wrist when you consider an infraction, and I'm not saying Reggie Bush was the most clean-cut guy, but what I will say is that Reggie Bush was an exceptional athlete, should never have had his Heisman stripped from him for something that his parents did, thought that was silly. To go from that to just basically slapping a program that stole signs on the wrist, Alex, man, what is the NCAA doing?
Yeah, so just to kind of give everybody context on what's going on here, it's the Michigan sign stealing scandal. Happened from 2021 to 2023 with Connor Stallions running the what they called the KGB network. He bought $35K in tickets, filmed opponent signals, they called it dirty film, and destroyed evidence by even dumping his phone in a pond to do so.
It's a different level of wanting to cheat. Did you feel that poorly about your chances that you had to steal footage and throw your phone in the pond? I mean, come on, man.
It covered 52 games against 13 future opponents. The financial ramifications of this for the penalty-wise are $20 million plus in fines, They forfeit, Michigan does, the Big Ten postseason revenue for 2 years. That's what they did in place of a postseason ban, and 10% of the football budget and scholarships. Recruiting-wise, 25% fewer official visits from 2025 to 2026, and a 14-week recruiting ban.
You know, Alex, of all of those punishments that you just named off, I think probably the most damaging for Michigan is probably the 25% of recruiting funding, I would think. Michigan obviously being in a type situation as Auburn and Alabama are in with each other with Ohio State. Ohio State just usually been ahead of the game, especially in recruiting, particularly on defense and at wide receiver. Michigan not able to land as much of those big name guys, and 25% of your recruiting funding in a stage where players are just gimme, that doesn't really help a whole lot.
Not at all. I'm just stuck on the fact there was. I mean, I kind of understand the no postseason ban, but I don't understand not forfeiting the wins, because obviously scouting teams ahead of time, stealing signals, whether you think it should be legal or not, it's against guidelines, and you did it to win games. You can't tell me that didn't help Michigan win at least one or two of those games they scouted for, or the Connor Stallions did. And the fact that Michigan didn't have to forfeit wins is mind-boggling to me. Just to give an example that hits close to home is Alabama vacated 21 wins from 2005 to 2007 because student athletes improperly obtained free textbooks from other students.
Yeah, and the Sean Alexander situation didn't help either, where he came and said that he took a pay cut when the Seahawks drafted him from what he was making at Alabama. You know, that didn't help matters a whole lot. But to your point, the inconsistencies ring true. And I'm just going to be honest. I read a post of a Michigan fan page on it, and I don't care about Michigan football in terms of being a fan. I don't really like Ohio State. So I go for Michigan against Ohio State, but I saw Michigan fans comparing this to the deflate gate in the Super Bowl with the Tom, and I'm just sitting here like, you realize if they deflate the footballs, there's no way to do it for one side, which means the Patriots would have played with deflated balls too, and they still made a comeback. So how is that anything like this? We didn't do that for That's Tougher Enough, but if we did, I think that would have garnered a That's Enough.
Yeah, that definitely would have been That's Enough. And the reason, just to give some context for the reason that the NCAA didn't levy a postseason ban, is the panel determined that a postseason ban would unfairly penalize student athletes for the actions of coaches and staff who are no longer associated with the Michigan football program. I don't understand that. Again, there's another example you can tie this to. Akron isn't eligible for postseason play this season because of the multi-year academic progress rate score, where Akron scored a 914, which is below the 930 minimum required. And this is a 4-year average from the 4 years before this season. So you're punishing the incoming freshmen for things that seniors that are no longer there ended up doing. And honestly, majority of those players that you're getting those progress reports for are transferred by now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it just absolutely makes no sense. And Ohio State fans were basically saying, "Oh, well, this is the Alabama situation of the Big Ten," and I'm just like, no, it's not, because as you noted earlier, Alabama was way more heavily penalized than what Michigan did. And granted, if you break a violation, you should be penalized. But when you start to dissect the inconsistencies, it's not very hard to look past some.
That's really all anybody's asking for in these situations, is just consistency with the punishment. If you're going to postseason ban Michigan and postseason ban the next team. If you're not going to postseason ban Michigan, if something like this comes around again, I shouldn't expect to see a postseason ban for that team.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no doubt about it. The next thing we're going to talk about is the NCAA Top 25 preseason poll. It is here. There are a lot of teams, Alex, that I would consider surprises, but there's also some teams that I think are getting the credit they deserve, and I want to know your thoughts on it here in just a second whenever my phone decides to cooperate. But Alex, one thing that I know off the top is we talked about a few weeks ago, Texas locking up that number one spot. Oddly enough, when I read the stat that was their first ever preseason top 25 ranking, it kind of made me stop and think a minute, because Texas maybe not as many championships as your Tide, but still an outstanding football school that is putting many players in the NFL. Really hard to believe this is the first time they've ever had that spot.
It is wild, but I also think about the teams that were playing the time that they had success. USC being the biggest one, always kind of usurped them in that kind of ranking.
Yeah, absolutely. To round you out the rest of the top 10, Penn State, the Nittany Lions coming in at second. I personally thought this was a little high, not too off, because I do really like Drew Aller's quarterback talent. He had an up and down year last year, finished pretty good. The biggest thing, though, is they get two outstanding running backs back, and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. That's got to be top college football running back duo in terms of what they can do, I would think. So is that Penn State number 2 ranking fair to you?
I think it is. I'm a huge fan of what Penn State brought back. You talked about Drew Aller and Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. They also brought in Syracuse wide receiver Trevor Pena. He's going to be a stud for them, give him a weapon that they really didn't have at receiver last year. The defense is always going to be good under James Franklin. The biggest change defensively for them was Tom Allen, their DC from last year, who had the defense ranked top 5, is now at Clemson, and Penn State ended up bringing in the Ohio State defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles.
Yeah, so but two actually pretty good hires, both from Clemson. I really respect Allen and his defense, but talk about the big move to get Ohio State's DC. Ohio State, obviously, people consider them cornerback U. They've put a lot of especially secondary and safety players in the league. Coming in at number 3 is the Ohio State Buckeyes. The passing game. I don't know if it'll really lose a beat. They do have a new starting quarterback in Julian Sayin, very, very talented kid, but look at what he has to throw the football to. You talk about Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Jeremiah Smith was right there with Ryan Williams last year. He's a year older, but in terms of freshman sensations, you always heard Ryan Williams and you always heard Jeremiah Smith too. An absolute walking touchdown, as they say.
It's going to be hard to look at Julian Sayin and look at the weapons around him, not only in that receiving room, but also the running back room, bringing in West Virginia running back C.J. Donaldson Jr., and not think he's going to be successful. It's almost like Arch Manning at Texas, where he might not have to be the best quarterback in the entire world because the weapons around him are going to lift him up and help him get to that point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the offense might have to score a lot. You know, there are some questions for Ohio State's DL, but, you know, they usually have somebody step up and emerge as a leader. Number 4 is Clemson. And I don't think people talk about the job Dabo Swinney did enough for last year. You talk about losing several games of your first 4 or 5 on the scale. What were they, 3-2 to start the year?
It was rough.
Just the offense just spitted and sputtered. They didn't really have an identity. You're thinking, is this the end of Clemson? I mean, Clemson was for the ACC what Alabama was for the SEC in terms of what Dabo was able to do with consistent wins. But there was some doubt last year. But Clemson to end the year, I think they won 8 of their last 9. And it just reminded people what Dabo Swinney is capable of as a coach. They get back Cade Klubnik. He is pretty inconsistent in terms of his passing, but he's always going to have enough elusiveness to keep people honest. And I think that with veteran Antonio Williams to throw the football to, TJ Moore is poised to improve upon a 651 yardage true freshman season. Clemson does have enough weapons. Is number 4 fair for the Tigers?
I would have had them ranked above Ohio State. I know Ohio State's the defending national champions, but you kind of talked about it a little bit, KJ. Is Ohio State lost so much on the defensive side of the football, and you also lose Emeka Egbuka at the receiver position, that I just don't think Ohio State is better right now than Clemson is. If you look at Clemson, what they returned, Cade Klubnik, people have him ranked as a top 3 quarterback going into the season. Antonio Williams at receiver. You also have Bryant Wesco Jr., who is an absolute stud. I expect him to have a breakout year for the Tigers. The defense, Peter Woods at the defensive tackle position, ranked as the best defensive tackle in college football going into the season. Avion Terrell at the cornerback position. He has legacy with his older brother, A.J. Terrell, playing for the Atlanta Falcons. And I can go on and on about what's on both sides of the football. And it's hard not to look at it, see the experience, see Tom Allen coming in from Penn State, who coached the top 5 defense last year, and not think this team's going to get even better.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. And honestly, outside of Clemson in the ACC, Pitt is a threat, and I really don't see much else outside of that in terms of what they can do in the playoff. Number 5 is Georgia. The optimism for Georgia is the receivers should be much improved, believe it or not. Georgia led the nation last year with 31 dropped passes.
Thank you, Arian Smith.
Yeah, it was the most in college football. The Bulldogs did hit the portal hard for some wideouts, though. The big name, sure-handed Noah Thomas coming over from Texas A&M. He's 6'5", just gives a huge range to throw the football to. But don't forget about Zechariah Branch. Not really showed up at the college level yet, but definitely has the athletic ability. And I think Georgia on defense did add Elio Mendoza, the rare service transfer from Army, and that was actually a pretty good pickup. People say, "Oh, he transferred from Army." Did you watch Army football last year?
I can't say I did. I'm not a huge fan of sitting there watching the triple option.
I understand that. They did 2 things extremely well. They hit you hard on defense, and their running backs hit the holes hard. And I think that kind of tough-nosed play fits right into what Kirby Smart can do defensively. Georgia at number 5, what do you think?
I think Georgia takes a step back this year. Gunnar Stockton, I know he was kind of thrown into the fire last year with Carson Beck's injury. Was not super impressed with him. Also not a big fan of offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. Got to see him call plays at Auburn. Absolutely abysmal. The weapons, while you talk about, are much improved from last year. I just don't see a way the offense and then the defense, I talked about it on last week's show. It's always going to be good under Kirby. He can have 2-star recruits all over that defense. It'll be perfectly fine. I'm just not a big believer in that offense in an SEC where you have teams like Texas, who is going to be explosive offensively. Ole Miss always will be that way. I expect Alabama to be that way under Ryan Grubb. I just don't see Georgia being that explosive offensively to be able to compete against teams like that.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And coming in at number 6, the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame. People talked last year about the flop in the playoff. I'm going to say something with Jeremiah Love. I think Jeremiah Love is as influential to Notre Dame as Ryan Williams is to Alabama. I think Jeremiah Love is an absolute beast in the open field. And when he went down with injury and was limited in what he could do in the playoffs, it really hurt Notre Dame, but still managed to average 70 yards a contest last season. Notre Dame did play some good defenses. They don't always have a very good schedule, known to have a bunch of cupcakes. But last year, Alex, Notre Dame did play some good defenses. Notre Dame at 6, what do you think?
I'm just worried about the quarterback. C.J. Carr was named the starter this week. We haven't seen him do a lot or anything really in college. He's going to have pieces around him like Arch Manning does at Texas and Julian Zand does at Ohio State. You mentioned Jeremiah Love. You also have Jadarian Price at running back, who's also a very talented guy there. The receiving core is much, much improved. You bring back Jaden Greathouse. You also bring Will Pauling in from Wisconsin, and then Malachi Fields from Virginia. 2 of those guys are really talented that they brought into the transfer portal. The tight end, Eli Raridan's going to be really good. Cooper Flanagan's back. He was a stud for them last year. Offensive line, you're going to have some question marks there, losing a couple of guys, but the mainstay, Anthony Knapp, and then a true freshman, you also bring in Will Black. So the offense will be fine with weapons around C.J. Carr. I just worry about C.J. Carr coming in with no experience. The defense, you bring back so much, especially in the defensive back room with Christian Gray, that I love Notre Dame, but it really does stick with the quarterback and C.J. Carr having no experience.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That could be definitely a question mark for Notre Dame. Coming in at number 7 is Oregon. The front 7, Oregon had to replace a few NFL draft picks, including first rounder Derek Harmon, doing great things already in the preseason. But they're still in good hands. Mateo Ugalele and Titum Tuioti. I think I actually did pretty good with those. Surprisingly, those names with multiple eyes kind of throw me for a curve. They also have some returning talent on offense. The concern, though, is the pass catchers. Evan Stewart, star wide receiver, could very well miss significant time recovering from that offseason knee injury. And the former 5-star prospect, Jurion Dickey, at receiver, was recently suspended indefinitely. That really took the wind out of Oregon's receiving room, I think, with those 2 blows. I don't think Oregon's ranking this year with a new quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, being gone. I don't think that's going to hold at number 7. I look for Oregon to maybe slide down pretty quickly.
I'm actually going to say Oregon stays pat in the top 10 at some point or somewhere this season. Dante Moore and him and Austin Novosad are the guys competing for that starting quarterback position. Both guys are super talented. The running back, Mekhi Hughes, coming over from Tulane, super talented guy. Could end up being a top 5 running back in college football at the end of the season. I do worry about the wide receiver weapons a little bit, but you have a guy by the name of Keon Sadiq at tight end that'll help with that issue at the receiver position. The defense will be great. I just fully believe in Will Stein at the offensive coordinator position to be able to get something out of the quarterback, whoever it might be, after watching him get stuff out of Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel the last 2 years.
Yeah, you do make a good point. Oregon does produce some good passing offense, so we'll see how that one plays out. Number 8, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They do have a veteran offensive line. I know Bama fans are saying, finally, let's see them go out there and block, and I kind of feel the same way about Auburn's, to be honest. But, Caden Proctor, probably a first-round draft pick at this point, I would say. Center Parker Bracefield has had a pretty good career at Alabama. Jaden Roberts, definitely a capable offensive tackle. The only concern I would say for Alabama, not a concern, but just you don't know yet, is the quarterback play in Ty Simpson, just simply because he's not had any significant time other than the South Florida game, be it a long time ago, was a really, really hard thing for Alabama fans to watch. This year, Kalen DeBoer has really surrounded him, I think, with a lot of great weapons. They revamped their receiver room to go along with Ryan Williams. Their backfield, even though Jam is hurt, is kind of deep. Defensively, they're not going to miss a beat. I can see several first or second round picks off of that defense. I think 8 is pretty much fair for Alabama right now.
I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, kind of repeating myself over and over again, but Alabama offensively have so many weapons around a new quarterback. I'm not worried about that offense as much. Defensively, different than teams like Ohio State and Notre Dame and Oregon, you bring back so much experience. Almost the entire defense is back. You bring in some talented transfers, some talented freshmen, that I think Alabama is too low. I do believe they're better than Oregon, and I do believe they'll end up being better than Ohio State. The Ohio State's favoritism at 3 is just because of the national championship win last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. I think Alabama is at a good spot at the start of this season. We'll see how the quarterback play shapes up. Number 9 is LSU, another SEC team coming in at the top 10. The optimism and probably concern at the same time has to be Garrett Nussmeier. Kind of a 1-2 punch. Nussmeier did lead the nation in passing yardage. He was 5th in passing yardage with 4,052 yards. Not a bad season at all. But the flip side was the turnovers. One of the top turnover infested, I guess you'd say, quarterbacks in the country. But he is battle tested, played in a lot of close games last year, has some pieces to work with. LSU, maybe not the best on the back end on their defense. They did lose several talents. I think LSU could. I have them as a dark horse team because we have to see how many turnovers Garrett Nussmeier has and how good he is after injury. Brian Kelly says he's good to go, but still, anytime you have a lower leg injury, it can be nagging, to say the least. We'll see how LSU goes, but is number 9 a good spot?
I would say so. The expectation with all the transfer portal additions they have, bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, who some have even ranked as the best quarterback in college football in the preseason, there's expectation for them to be one of the top 5 teams in the country at the end of the year. But what it's been for the past couple of years with Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier is that offense has been pretty good. I know Nussmeier struggled with turnovers, but the defense has been absolutely terrible. Terrible. You can go watch the Jalen Milroe game where he just ran all over them, and the inability to cover a read option for that defense was just mind-boggling, considering you knew that was going to be the game plan for Jalen Milroe, was to get him outside the pocket and scramble, and the fact you weren't prepared for that is crazy. I understand you bring back Harold Perkins at linebacker after he suffered some injuries last year. Whit Weeks, who was a stud last year at linebacker. You bring in talented freshman DJ Pickett, who's 6'5" at the corner position, an absolute nightmare to be out there. He is a little skinny at 195 pounds. I just worry about that defense and the inability to stop teams in the SEC, because I talked about it earlier. You're going to have Texas, you're going to have Ole Miss, you're going to have Alabama. The list goes on and on about teams in the SEC that are going to have very, very tout offenses. And if your defense can't stop them, even if your offense is as good as people expect it to be, you're not going to win a football game with your defense giving up 40 points.
Yeah, I agree with that. No doubt about it. Number 10, rounding out the top 10, is the Miami Hurricanes. The offensive line looks to be in really good shape. They do have a top prospect on the edge on defense in Reuben Bain. Very explosive off the end, can definitely make plays in the open field. For me, I have to see what version of Carson Beck shows up for the Hurricanes. Now, obviously, Carson Beck had a very successful first year as Georgia's starter. His sophomore year, close your eyes, Ducks fans, he led the SEC with 12 interceptions, more than Peyton Thorne. I didn't think that was possible, but here we are. The drops didn't help. We did allude to the drops earlier. Alex, when you have receivers that can't catch, it sets you back. But how good is he in comparison to what the offense was for what I think was one of the best characters of the draft, and obviously the best player in Cameron Ward, obviously with the Titans now. I love Cameron Ward so much, I might just get a jersey. I love his opinion on work ethic. It's just awesome to see. But Carson Beck replacing him, coming off a shaky season, first year in Miami, does have weapons around him. That's not to say he has no help, but what do you think that Carson Beck looks like for Miami?
I would expect him to have his confidence back. I feel like at times last year his confidence was kind of taken away with all the social media stuff, with some of the reactions in the stadium and whatnot. Maybe he lost some favor with the coaching staff. I think going to Miami, getting that change of scenery is going to give him some renewed confidence, regardless of what the weapons look like around him, which, to be honest, are not as good as they were at Georgia, even though Georgia had some drop issues. I do feel like the weapons around him at running back and receiver were better than they are this year at Miami. The defense, you talked about it a little bit, KJ, is going to be outstanding with a guy like Reuben Bain off the edge. But Carson Beck has to turn over a new leaf if he's going to be any success at Miami and even get looked at for the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One of the surprise teams in the playoff last year was Arizona State. You know, not a whole lot of well-known players other than Cam Scatabo. Cam now with the Giants doing some good things, making their roster. How much does his departure hurt the Arizona State team, which I absolutely love their coach, and I absolutely love their philosophy. They're a hard-nosed team. They're just going to line up and run the football. You're not going to see a lot of fancy passes down the field. But with a guy like Cam Scatabo now in the league, what do you think that offense looks like, and can the defense keep them in enough games to try to make another playoff push this year?
Well, you lose Cam Scatabo, but you bring in an Army transfer at running back, Kanye Udo. And what does Army do 99% of the time?
Run the football.
Run the football. So he is completely understanding of what that offense is going to be for him, is hand the ball off to you and get us some yardage. But we also can't ignore Sam Levitt at quarterback, who is uber talented, and then the receiver Jordan Tyson, who ended up missing the conference championship and then the playoffs last year after suffering a season-ending collarbone injury. He's expected to go in the really top 15 in the NFL draft next year.
Absolutely.
So there's weapons on that offense. They returned 79% of their production from last season, which is second best in the country. So not only do you return the two guys that I talk about with Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson, but you return so much more on both sides of the football that it's hard to not see this team be able to repeat what they did last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually think Arizona State might be a little too low based off what they have back. And you talked about Jordan Tyson. I couldn't agree more. You look at how the game with Texas went. Arizona State nearly pulled off an incredible upset with those guys who ended up doing some really good things in the playoff, but they were able to go out and get the Army transfer at running back and Kanye Udo and Jordan Tyson. You got to think if he was playing in that game, might look a lot different for Texas. We'll get to the rest of them pretty quickly. In the top 25, Illinois with Luke Godemeyer coming in at number 12. He was a huge win for Illinois to retain him. I think he should do good again. Preseason expectations, this is the most hype that Illinois received in a long time. We'll see if they handle it.
Another team that returns a lot of production from last year. I do worry about their ability to win in the Big Ten with all the teams they have around them, but they've caught the Big Ten at a good time where teams like Ohio State lost a lot of talent last year. Michigan's down right now. So two of the top three teams that are usually there are down in the current landscape of college football. So this is the year you kind of have to hit home.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Illinois where they're at. South Carolina, very quickly, we talked about them last week in Lenora Sellers, and I agree with you. The weapons around him are not very good. He has Nick Harbor, and they're still waiting to hear if their dynamic pass catcher is going to be eligible, and that is Rashul Faison. His eligibility is still up for grabs. That can do nothing but hurt South Carolina. We talked about Michigan with the scandal. The defense does still have the pieces to control games, even though Mason Graham and Will Johnson left. But honestly, with all of the offseason stuff, I think Michigan may take a fall this year, Alex. I don't know. I think they have enough on offense to keep them in games, and particularly Bryce Underwood, the freshman phenom. But we'll just see how much they're impacted by what's going on.
The scandal and all the punishment around it, it's either going to bring this team together or it's going to tear it apart. That's what's going to happen with the scandal and the fallout of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And number 15 is my wife's team, the Florida Gators, coming in at number 15. Their highest preseason ranking in quite some time. I know Florida had a great year last year with DJ Lagway taking over for the injury-filled Graham Mertz. DJ Lagway can absolutely ball. They did get some pieces around him. I actually like this Florida team. It would not shock me to see them beat LSU in Georgia, as I think they should have beat Georgia last year, and we're on track to do so.
Yeah. Florida is super talented. DJ Lagway has to stay healthy, and the defense has to be improved more than it was last year.
Absolutely. To round out the top 25 quickly, we have SMU at 16. Do like that. Kansas State at 17. We'll talk a little more about them later as we get ready for their game against Iowa State. Number 18, the Oklahoma Sooners. They do have a few really good pieces coming in. John Mateer, some other great things to throw the football to, but the offensive line is a question mark for Oklahoma, and the schedule is an absolute nightmare.
We talked about it last week with Oklahoma. The team's great, but the schedule is daunting, similar to Florida. The team's great, but everybody's worried about how they're able to play that schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Texas A&M at 19 could be one of those teams, make a wild card push. Then at 20, we have the Indiana Hoosiers. 21 is Ole Miss. Really kind of surprised to see Ole Miss this low. I think the transfer portal resilience paid off for Lane Kiffin, but it's not easy to move on from a guy like Jackson Dart, who they just absolutely ran through. Austin Simmons comes in as the new starter. How do you think that season goes for Ole Miss?
I would expect them to be ranked higher than 21 by the end of the season. Austin Simmons showed flashes last year when he had to go in for Jackson Dart. Logan Diggs at running back is going to help that room be much improved. The defense, you bring back both your linebackers, TJ Dockery and Son Terry Perkins. The transfer portal, like you said, helped them dividends. So Ole Miss will be higher than 21 by the end of the season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree with that. To round out the top 25, we have Iowa State at 22. More on them shortly. Texas Tech at 23. How about Texas Tech making a top 25 appearance? Tennessee coming in at number 24. Just the wide receiver talent is there, but again, with Georgia, with drops and the inexperience, kind of similar for Tennessee, a new starting quarterback. I don't look for them to be a threat in the SEC. I do think they could hang around and make things tough for some people. In Boise State, rounding out the top 25. We'll talk a little bit very quickly about the first game of the year. Iowa State is playing a ranked matchup against Kansas State. And I absolutely love it. We'll come right back with that. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back with the final blitz of the buzzer right after this. And welcome back into the final blitz of the buzzer here on Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann with you. Hey, Alex, there is something really special happening in college football. Should we tell everybody what it is if they haven't heard?
I think so. I think it's pretty important for football fans around there.
There is going to be a week 0 game between two ranked teams in Iowa State and Kansas State, and it's going to be played in Dublin, Ireland. Alex, if I had the money and I had the time, I would fly both of us, my wife and dad, if he wanted to go, to Dublin, and we would watch the game at an Irish pub. If you have never been to an Irish pub, even if you don't drink, the people are so much fun. And I can only imagine how the atmosphere there is going to be with college football coming to town. I really love this. I love the international matchups for the sport. All sports, more and more are starting to do it. I think this is huge for college football, and two pretty good teams returning a bulk of their talent. You want to talk about the game? We'll dissect it very quickly. And how do you think the atmosphere is going to be over there for those Irish people at 11 a.m.?
The atmosphere is going to be great. They're going to be drunk at 11 a.m. our time. It'll be 5 p.m. their time. So they'll be drunk. It's 5 o'clock there. So they're drunk. It's Farmageddon. That's what they call the rivalry between Iowa State and Kansas State. So you'll probably have fans there drunk as well from Kansas State and Iowa State.
Yeah, and I just love it for the sport. We'll talk about the matchup itself. As we said, two teams that made the top 25 in rankings. We'll start with Iowa State. The junior quarterback, Avery Johnson, looks to build off a really good season. His team last year didn't wow you record-wise, Alex, but 217 completions at 57%. 2,712 yards and 25-10 touchdown to INT ratio. Not too shabby. Dylan Edwards joining him in the backfield. He is on the preseason watch list for 3 different awards, as well as Rocco Beck coming off of a 35-05 passing season. He'll take the field for Iowa State. Excuse me, Avery Johnson for Kansas State. I got my words mixed up there. I was doing a quarterback comparison. Both quarterbacks coming off really good seasons, 3,505 yards for Rocco last year. I think this is going to be a really good game, Alex, and it might just have shootout written all over it.
Both Kansas State, Avery Johnson, super talented quarterback. People expect him to be one of the top 10 quarterbacks at the end of the season. Issue last year was his offensive coordinator was absolutely abysmal, Connor Riley. They replaced him with Matt Wells. Matt Wells is going to throw the ball around the field. J.C. Brown is back at receiver to help out Avery Johnson. He had 20% target share overall last year for the Wildcats. Offensive line only returns 2 starters, add 3 guys out of the portal. That could be an issue for Avery Johnson, who is going to have to really run around the pocket, but he is adept at doing that, being a kind of scrambling type quarterback. Defense returns 5 starters. So you have some returning guys there on the defense that'll be able to kind of keep it going for the Kansas State Wildcats. Iowa State returns 8 starters on offense. Rocco Beck's back, but you lose 2 receivers in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel to the NFL. And I do not think that Iowa State did a good enough job in the portal to replace 2 of those uber talented guys. They got Xavier Townsend from UCF, and then Chase Sewell from ECU. And Sewell, who while he's 6'4", similar to Jaden Higgins, Sewell had a 23% drop rate at ECU last year.
Yeah, it's not going to get it done, especially when you're playing top 25 football. And you talk about defense for good reason. I said it might be a shootout if no weapons step up and emerge for Iowa State. That could change. But I think the defense that steps up and gets a turnover or two may just be the difference.
One thing for Iowa State is they ranked 127th in missed tackle rate last year. That is horrid.
It kind of reminds me of the 2013 Auburn Tigers defense. I mean, not very good at tackling. We did do better at the end of the season, but missed tackles, especially our corners. I would joke with my dad, they just go up and flag at somebody, not even trying to wrap up, just wave at them as they come by. We're going to take another break and come back to wrap up the final blitz at the buzzer here on Full Court Blitz. And welcome back into the final blitz at the buzzer. We're at what's already appearing to be a crowd and fan favorite. That's tough or that's enough, where we discuss a few trending quotes in sports. Alex, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. First up, we have Desmond Watson. Played his college football at Florida, was viral for the big boy running the ball, 400-plus pounds. He actually landed a contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, they told him that he was going to have to basically get in shape to play football, even after he lost 35 pounds, was down to, I think it's 428. And I don't like this, and I think that's enough, and I'll get your thoughts on it. But just to go through a few huge players, Nate Newton played 13 seasons in the NFL, primarily with the Cowboys, weighing over 400 pounds the entirety of his career and lasted 13 years. Aaron Gibson was a first-round draft pick by the Detroit Lions, listed at 410 pounds, and he went in the first round. And then the most obvious one, a little bit lighter at 382, but the Fridge, William Perry, absolutely legendary player to tote the football and do some blocking. Alex, he can play. Give him a chance or no? Is that tough or is that enough?
I'm going to say that's enough, but I'm going to take this angle on it. I think he should be practicing. Now, should he be playing? That's up to the head coach. But the fact you won't even let him practice after he's put in work to lose that weight, I don't understand. But to kind of hit on your point there about some players that played at that big of a weight, is back in those times, offenses were completely different. They were run first. They were trying to get into the A gap and just run it down your throat. Nowadays, these defensive tackles are having to run around the football field trying to keep up with Lamar Jackson and Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill when he's getting the jet touch passes. Desmond Watson isn't going to be able to do that at the way he's sitting at right now. But he's got to be able to practice. If you're going to reward the guy for losing all this weight, putting in that work, it's worth letting him at least practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So me and Alex on the same page with that one. Number 2, we move on. Anthony Richardson, the quarterback for the Colts, the product of the Florida Gators. And honestly, this guy, I like what Florida has now, but this guy really not making Florida or the Colts look good. Comes out a few weeks ago, Alex, and says it is easier to play in the NFL than it is to college. Then goes and loses the quarterback starting position to Daniel Jones. Not a very good quarterback, for lack of better phrases. The career arc, to go through it real quick, he had 13 career college starts, only threw 55%. He was the 4th overall pick, way too high. Then he had 4 starts in his rookie year, was the week 1 starter in 2024, took himself out of the game.
Remember that.
Got benched, was renamed the starter, 48% passer in year 2 last year. And again, the quote that it's easier than losing the job to Daniel Jones. Is Anthony Richardson tough? Is there anything that says he's a worthy player to hold on to, or is that enough? Have you just heard enough from Anthony Richardson? He just should count his blessings and what little he's done in football.
That's enough for him with the Colts. It's time to move on. If you're making Daniel Jones your starting quarterback over a 23-year-old Anthony Richardson, I think you've given up on that player, Anthony Richardson. To say that college football is harder than the NFL, what are we doing? What are we doing, Anthony Richardson? It's been proven that both are very difficult, but the NFL is even more difficult due to the sheer talent in that league. It's way better than college football. It's more centralized. The best players play in the NFL. If you look at the percentages, I don't have them sitting in front of me right now, but I'm sure it's like 5% of college football players end up playing in the NFL, and those 5% are the most talented players. Anthony Richardson has had his chance. It's just a situation where the Colts drafted on the NFL draft combine and intangibles, rather than looking at the breadth of work of Anthony Richardson and saying, wow, this guy only has 13 career starts in college. He didn't play that great. Maybe we don't draft him 4th overall. They looked at the Lamar Jackson comps and got caught up in that and the speed, and were like, you know what, this guy, he's going to be Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts for us. He's not even close. He takes himself out of football games. He's losing quarterback battles to Daniel Jones. It's time for him to get a change of scenery. He has the talent to do it. I just question, does he have the willpower to be a starting NFL quarterback?
Yeah, the mentality's not there for sure. Our last, that's tough or that's enough point, Dan Orlovsky, an analyst now, came out and said that he thinks that the expansion to 16 teams, which is what college football is trying to do, is absurd. Alex, is that tough or is that enough?
I'm going to go 3 for 3 today. That's tough. I agree with it. Dan Orlovsky saying it's absurd to want to expand the college football playoff to the 24 or 28 teams. 10. I think the perfect number for me is 10. You have the 5 conference winners and 5 at-large bids. I think the most you want to go to is 16.
Yeah, I was going to say 16 has to be the line. I think 16 for me is kind of reminiscent to a Sweet 16 in March Madness. You give some non-Power 5 schools an opportunity, so you don't have the UCF situation. Oh, it's not fair.
Claim your national championship.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have any of that. Cincinnati, oh, man, I heard that one for the longest. Then they got put in the playoff, and look what happened. So I think that this is good, and I'm going to agree with you. We're all on the same page today with that's tough or that's enough. I think that is tough. I like Dan Orlovsky as an analyst, and I think he's right. We're going to take another quick break and come back with the final segment of the final blitz at the buzzer with Bust or Trust in fantasy football right after this. Welcome back to the final blitz at the buzzer. We are in the Bust and Trust segment where I give you a little bit of fantasy football advice if it applies. Starting with tight end, Evan Ingram. I'm going to have him as a bust. The now veteran tight end did sign with the Broncos last offseason, but is coming off his worst season. He does have youth throwing him the football in Bo Nix, but he just has not shown that he can be trusted as a tight end one position. Did have a few good years with the Giants. Really not the same player after some injuries. Do you think he's a bust, or would you trust Evan Ingram?
I'm honestly going to trust him. Bo Nix liked to target his tight ends last year. He likes to throw those checkdowns. Evan Ingram's the tight end one, doesn't see a lot of competition at that position. Sean Payton's known to love that tight end position. Jimmy Graham comes to mind at his time with the New Orleans Saints. So I'll trust Evan Ingram for now, even though he is on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, absolutely. That one could go either way. I have him as a bust, but still some capability. The tight end that I'm trusting is Brock Bowers, the second-year player from Georgia, probably the most likely consensus tight end one in all of fantasy. I know in our league everyone wanted him for good reason. One of the best rookie seasons for a tight end and an otherwise abysmal offense last year that couldn't get going. Just under 1,200 receiving yards with who he had throwing the football is pretty eye-opening, and it was good for an NFL record. Only one other capable pass catcher to compete with him in Jacoby Myers. They do get Geno Smith now. That's up and down. We don't know if that's a great addition yet, but if he can make it work with Aiden O'Connell, I think he can make it work with Geno Smith. I am trusting Brock Bowers all season.
You took my thunder there. I was going to talk about the lack of competition in the receiving room with Jacoby Myers being really the only guy. Ashton Genty's going to take a load off, hopefully, giving that running back room a big boost. Geno Smith, while I'm not a Geno Smith fan at all, anything's an improvement over last year's quarterback room.
I agree. I'm going to do a little bit of defense now. I think the team defense that is a bust is for now, the Ravens. Now, this could change. A top 10 defense statistically, the Ravens may be a bust for now. They do have a collection of talent, especially up front and on the back end. But week one, they're going against my fantasy quarterback, Josh Allen. Josh, you better not let me down. And a receiving corps without Stephon Diggs, but that means more targets for dynamic young guys in Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir. And they are at Buffalo. I look for both of those guys to make statements in week one. I'm not trusting the Ravens defense right now, but that could change.
I'm not going to trust them in week one. The Bills offense is going to be super, super good, regardless of what Stephon Diggs brought to that team, even though it's 2 years since he's been there. Khalil Shakir has been a stud for them. Keon Coleman will be much improved. James Cooks now is back with the team. While I think the Ravens defense is going to have a great season overall, week one is it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The defense I'm trusting is the Eagles. The week one matchup for the Eagles is the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I loved Dak Prescott in college, not a fan of what Jerry Jones is doing for that team. He almost let CD Lamb go to pay Dak Prescott more money. What are you doing, Jerry? But the Eagles have playmakers at every level. Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean up front, back end, Cooper DeJean and Keely Ringo, and what I think might be the most underrated linebacker in the NFL, Zach Bond, had an outstanding year last year. The defense looked good, and there's no reason to think that won't continue. I'm trusting the Eagles.
I'm going to make a bold statement here. I would not be surprised if the Cowboys are last in their division at the end of the season. Would not be surprised. And I don't think week one's going to be any different for him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're going to wind it up with some linebacker addition of Buster Trust. TJ Edwards, I've got him as a bust. We just talked about the Eagles. He was a staple of that defense a few years ago, but since has joined a Chicago linebacker corps featuring Tremaine Edmonds. His production dipped at that point. This is not a lost hope for fantasy owners. You can put him as your individual defensive player, but if you're expecting linebacker one numbers, he's not going to get that over Tremaine Edmonds. I think he's a bust for now as far as a linebacker one position, TJ Edwards.
I'll say he's a bust as well. I'm not a big believer in him either.
Yeah, I think that's probably what most people feel. The linebacker I trust is Fred Warner. It doesn't get much more consistent. He has been the staple and leader in the middle. He's missed one game through 7 years at middle linebacker. That's a big statement in itself. His projection is always liable to be higher. He was over 4 times last year, more than any other linebacker in fantasy. Trusting Fred Warner was and will always be a good idea. He's put up 4 straight 130-plus tackle seasons. That's pretty remarkable, and it should continue this season, especially with some of the other members being gone from the team.
I'll trust him as well. It's hard to go away from a guy like Fred Warner, who actually gives me nightmares because of Madden. He's always like levitating to get a pick on me. So I love Fred Warner, and I'll trust him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, we appreciate you for hanging out with us in another Football Frenzy edition of Full Court Blitz. This has been the Full Court Blitz at the buzzer. We've had a lot of fun. We got to close out. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I hope you stay tuned for next week.